Hey good people, welcome back to Beauty in the Frizz. My name is Kara. Whether you're new or returning, thank you so much for stopping by and hanging out with me today. So y'all already know it's Sunday and you know what that means. It is mimosas and makeup. Now, during a live chat, I'm probably gonna have a little mimosa, but right now I am having a strawberry bubbly. A couple of reasons why. I plan on getting on my Peloton today. I got on earlier this week and it just felt so good. I'll go into that in a minute. But yeah, and I did some like weight training this morning. So just trying to get it back together. I want to tone up more, but more for my mental health situation. I'm just saying that I'm not drinking right now. And I'm about to take the boys to McDonald's when I'm filming this video. And I'm taking the boys to McDonald's when I'm done filming this video. Yes, I know it's bad. I know. You gotta choose your battles sometimes though. But when I get back, I definitely, after I get on my bike, might have me a little something. Okay, anyway, I'm joining in on this eyeshadow palette tag part 2 because I love talking about eyeshadow. So if you wanna see my take on the tag and the eyeshadow palettes that I pick, keep watching this video. Let me know what you think. And if makeup is your therapy and your love and you are working on changing your relationship with makeup for 2022, and you want to connect with another makeup enthusiast that's trying to do the same thing, definitely consider joining the community. I'd love to have you back. All right, let's get started. I mean, this gives you like a little sparkling. No, it doesn't. It doesn't give you mimosa feel. Let me just stop the lies. Let me go ahead and do a little update situation before we get into this tag. Oh my God. So this week, I may have mentioned a while back that found out I needed to have my whole basement waterproofed. So I am going to probably need to move over so I can show y'all this situation. Hey, Annabelle girl. Basically, I'm gonna have to renovate my whole basement, like not even by choice, because the whole perimeter of the house had to be jackhammered from the inside, waterproofed, cemented. And the thing about these waterproofing companies is like, it's not a package deal. So pretty much they just destroy. They destroy and conquer. And then you have to figure out how you're gonna get everything put back. So now my task is to find a contractor or, you know, a carpenter, builder, I don't even know, painters, all those people to fix my situation. One of the rooms that you're gonna see in this footage is gonna be my YouTube beauty room, and I'm really excited about it. And maybe like slash gym situation. I could put my Peloton down there, which you always kind of see one of the weights in the back all the time. It'll just be nice to have some more space because right now it is an episode of Hoarders in here. Just wanted to give you that little update. Thought I'd share. I definitely like to connect and let you guys know what's going on with me because sometimes it'd be a lot. All right, if you are unfamiliar with the eyeshadow palette tag part 2, this was started by Samantha March and Allie Glines. I do watch Samantha March from time to time, and you know, she's the one that originated the Will I Buy It series here on YouTube. And Allie Glines, I do watch her from time to time as well. I did the eyeshadow palette tag part 1, so this is like the remix. Anytime where I can talk about eyeshadow palettes, I definitely take that opportunity because I have so much eyeshadow, and trying to answer these questions really forces me to go through my collection, pull out palettes I haven't thought about, haven't used, and you know, I use them, and it just makes me fall in love with eyeshadow all over again. As you know, I have had a bit of an eyeshadow obsession, addiction, and I am trying to get better about that and learn to enjoy the things that are in my collection, because all of the things in my collection I wanted at some point for some reason, even if it was the wrong reason, it's here. And I want to explore those palettes a bit more. All 200 something of them. Okay, I'm going to link Samantha March's video and Allie Glines' video in the description box, so check out their videos. And I'm also going to link Dr. Ash from Dr. Ash and Her Makeup because she just did the video as well. And since Ash and I are so close, I really enjoyed seeing, you know, what she thought, because I already had my picks ahead of time, and then I watched her video today and I was like, okay, so yeah. All right, let's get to these questions. If you are a content creator and you want to do this tag yourself, the questions will be in the description box. Okay, let's get to it. Small disclaimer, might cheat on a couple of these. It might have an honorable mention or two. Question number 1 is, what is your all-time favorite palette? 3 palettes came to mind, and I'm gonna share all 3, but I'm gonna start with, I guess we can call these the runners up. Hey, Og. Well, we were gonna get ready to go to McDonald's in like 10 minutes. Would you like a piece of fruit? Is that closed all the way? No. Sometimes you gotta pick your battles with these kids. Like, I'm just not for it right now. I wanna talk about my palettes. I'm gonna start with the 2 runner-ups, and then I'm gonna tell you what I think my all-time favorite is, because this could change. It could change tomorrow. Let me tell you about these. So these guac chips, you cannot find in the stores. If they're discontinuing these, like, I have to get them shipped from Target. Okay, these are the crumblies. I was going to tell you there was a fresh bag, but you know, people are gonna click off the video. My room is a place of peace. That's why your bag got caught. Go ahead. That's why his bag got caught in the door, being ugly. See, people don't like ugly. God don't like ugly. My second runner-up for my all-time favorite palette should be a surprise. It is the Rust palette by Melt Cosmetics. I talk about this palette a lot. I recommend this palette a whole lot, and I just had this one out this week. This was my very first Melt palette. This is a beautiful warm tone palette. Neutral, easy to use. I did take out this shade, which was classic, which was a matte of the same color, and I put in a Give Me Glow shimmer, and I talked about this in my Melt palette rotation video, and I'll link that. But this is the great Melt formula that we all know and love. This is a formula I was introduced to, and I love it. I think my favorite shade in the palette is the shade Erode. I just love this yellow mustard. It's just a very beautiful shade. The mattes matte, the shimmers shim the way they need to, easy to blend, but it is a runner-up. My second runner-up for all-time favorite palette, it has to go to the Natasha Denona Trio Chrome palette. When I looked at the questions and it said favorite palette of 2021, I wanted to pick this one, but this came out in 2020. This shade, this was the shade Vertex. I was never gonna use it. I don't remember what color it was. So I just made this palette perfect by adding in this navy blue, which came from maybe Circo Loco, maybe. I don't know where it came from. It might have come from one of those BoxyCharm palettes I bought. But man, this palette, it's like a grungy pastel palette. That's why, Tasha, what are you doing with the new palette? What are you doing? Let me not, because I don't need this video to be super long. I'm already not following rules and directions, but I mean, this palette is all of the things, okay? It's everything. Turning off the ring light so we can just see the beauty of this palette here. It is just amazing. The shimmers in this palette are great. I played these shimmers at first, but no, they're absolutely beautiful. You just can't go wrong with this palette. And here's what they look like. I think you can see them better with the ring light off. It's just grungy goodness and greatness. The one thing I will say about this palette that I think makes it special, especially for someone like me that doesn't really go for pastels, these light pastels, from what I've seen, have showed up beautifully on a variety of skin tones. And that's what makes this one special. The new one, I'm not sure how that's gonna do, but the new palette also doesn't have any depth. And that's what this palette had. This was just a really special palette. I think it was out of the box for Natasha Denona. And she could have done this in the smaller size, but because I love this palette so much, I don't mind having this in the big size. And I remember getting this for a discount. So this is like number 2. Yeah, I'm gonna go with that. So my all-time favorite palette, after much debate, has to go to Enduring Love by Sydney Grace. This palette was just never something that I even looked at. The first Sydney Grace palette I bought was Tiny Marbles, which I absolutely adore that palette. But this right here, another sneaky good palette. Now we already know with Sydney Grace, the quality is going to be top notch. So quality is not an issue. That is just the furthest thing from my mind. But the variety of looks that you can get with this particular color story is what snuck up on me. I love how you can do these like soft, beautiful kind of pink looks. You still have a beautiful kind of, what is this, magenta shade here that's very, very pigmented. You've got this blue here, which is, this is my type of blue. You know, I don't like blue. One of my favorite shades in this palette, and let me show it to you up close first. Here's the palette up close. And you know what? I have to move my ring light. I should have my ring light in front of the camera because there's always that glare, but I'm already in. I gotta stay the course. One of my favorite shades in this palette is the shade Deanna. It's this one right here. I'm not sure what you call this shade. It just reminds me of, this is gonna sound weird, it makes me think of like a mechanic or like when I go get an oil change. It's just so grungy. It's like some type of antique metallic color, and the description escapes me. I mean, there's no frills on this palette, there's no duochromes, but Sydney Grace just has these highly pigmented shimmers and they are just top notch. Even like this satin one, Abigail, is beautiful. You have a black, you have a brown, and this surprises me as my all-time favorite palette because it's cool tone. Cool tone palettes are not really what I gravitate to. I gravitate more to the rust palettes and like the Natasha Denona bronze palettes, which was another one I was surprised wasn't up for consideration. But yeah, all-time fave has to be Enduring Love. I'm gonna be getting into these palettes, y'all, so I'm just letting y'all know. And this is the deep, ooh, this is about to be an enduring death because I almost dropped it. This is the deep version. Okay, finally we're at question number 2. So question number 2 is, what is a new favorite? My new favorite palette has to go to the Red Dragon palette by Odin's Eye Cosmetics in collaboration with Judy, who is a content creator here on YouTube. This was the palette, like I was getting all 3 palettes from the legendary Diversa collection, but this was the palette that I saw a lot of people skip on. And once people saw it in action, they were like, I should have got that. I know a lot of people got it on the restock, but now all 3 palettes are discontinued. So I'm super thankful that I got this palette when I did. A lot of people said, I have these colors, it's a neutral palette, but this is not your basic neutral palette. And the way that she chose these colors, I just think the color story was just very well thought out. I love how you've got this bright red, you've got a burgundy, you have a very deep, almost like a brown plum, a blum, I don't know. But you have these beautiful shades. There's a mustard up here. There is a, oh, this reminds me of the yellow green crayon from the Crayola box. Y'all know which one I'm talking about? You got brown. You've got these kind of orange vibes here. You've got a multi-chrome. Let me find the multi-chrome. The shade is Luna. Here's the multi-chrome Luna. And you can see that it's red, but you can start to see that shift right here. It's gorgeous. Not sure if you can see it as well with the ring light on. The other thing that I love about this palette is that although it may seem like a plain neutral palette, you have a variety of looks that you can create. And despite having so much variety, all of the colors really mesh well together. I just don't think there's a bad combination that you can make with this palette. I'm looking in the little monitor because I'm just trying to see if the colors are showing up just as beautiful as they look in person, and they're probably not. Odin's Eye has an incredible eyeshadow formula, and honestly, I think they've moved up to my top 5, one of my top 5 favorite brands. This is definitely my new favorite. Every time I use it, I just fall in love with it more and more. One thing I also wanted to share is you can kind of go across the rows to make a look, even having a beautiful grungy smoky matte look at the bottom, but you can even go down the columns and make a look, and it's just so easy, and I love that. I love this palette so much. I can't stop talking about it. I even wear the scarves. I wear the scarves at night, and we talked about that sneak peek of the new collab. I think the creator is going to be revealed on February 9th, which is coming up, y'all, on Wednesday. So I've heard some talk that it may be Angelica. A lot of people are saying that because it's kind of blurred out, but the palette is gorgeous. It's going to be a must-have for me. Favorite new palette. My runner-up for this palette, I don't have it out right now, but it was the Gemini palette by Melt Cosmetics. I used it for the first time last week, and I can completely understand why everybody raves about that palette. I understand why it's always sold out, and I understand why people love it. But what I don't understand is when things sell out that people love, why don't you bring it back? I'm gonna move on to the next question. So the next question is, what is the palette that you keep for the memories? This is the Game of Thrones and Urban Decay collab. Every time I bring this out, I say to myself, you should have gotten the entire thing, because Game of Thrones is my favorite show of all time. You can't tell me anything about it. I mean, this whole situation was great. I am not sure what happened after that with Urban Decay, because the Prince collaboration and just everything else is like, come on. This collab was so well put together, and if I can find a picture of the whole vault, I'll pop it up. But I just got the palette. I tried to get a lipstick. The collection was selling like hotcakes. Like, you could not get it. And I was like, I'm not paying $250 for this whole thing. That's so expensive. Little did I know where I'd be at this time, because now I'm like, actually, that wasn't bad for what you got. They had 2 brushes. They had like a sword. And they had this, it was like a cheek stain that was to mimic like blood. It was just great. There were 4 lipsticks. I still use my eyeliners. I actually just used one of my eyeliners yesterday. It was when I wore the Decadence palette. It's like a blue one. I'm not gonna go into Game of Thrones because I don't want to bore anybody that you know, unfortunately missed out. You can still watch it though. And there is a prequel coming out this year that's going to be kind of like the backstory for the Targaryen family. But you've got the Iron Throne here, and there is a quote here, and it says, "Never forget what you are. The rest of the world will not. Wear it like armor, and it can never be used to hurt you." And again, that was Tyrion Lannister. Oh yeah, and then Daenerys Targaryen had the quote on the front. Big mirror here, and then you pull it out, and then there's the palette. Now, the whole concept with this palette is that there's one section for the 4 main houses in the movie. So we have, well, actually, this isn't a house. This is for like the White Walkers. But then we have Winterfell, which was the Starks. We have the King's Landing, and this was for the Lannister family. And then we have the Targaryen family. So let me show y'all this up close. The whole concept with each section is you have your quads for each section, but then these circular shades on the end.
We're going to McDonald's.
We're going to McDonald's in 10 minutes. Can you close the door? All right, back to this, y'all. I'm sorry about all the disruptions. The circular shades on the end of the palette were supposed to be, or are supposed to be, transforming shades that you can use more so as a topper, but you can use them by itself actually. The only quad I didn't like was the quad for the Targaryens, because everyone had a saying for their house, and theirs was like fire and blood. So this dainty kind of quad I didn't like that there wasn't a deep shade in here for Daenerys. And I remember doing a look with this, like, I really hate this look, but all the rest of them, They're great. They are great. I think my favorite two are the Winterfell and the King's Landing, you know, sections. I definitely will keep this for the memory. My runner-up was Urban Decay Born to Run. So we see a little theme here. Marky, go get your, Marky, can you give me 5 minutes? Okay, so the next question is an underrated palette in your collection. I could not choose between these two palettes, but they are both Kaleidos palettes, and they are from the Futurism eyeshadow series. If I had to choose one, it would be Lunar Lavender. And the reason why I'm picking Lunar Lavender is because I like purple eyeshadow, but I'm not like, oh my God, purple eyeshadow. But when I put it on, I feel like it always looks so good. And I think it's because purple looks good with brown eyes. I wore this palette a few weeks ago, and I was just blown away with the look that I created. It is so gorgeous. I can easily find a way to use all 6 of these shades in my look. This shimmer here is really, really beautiful. Let me swatch it. It's just a beautiful shimmer shade. It stands on its own. You can use it as a topper. This is just a gorgeous palette, and I'm so happy to have it in my collection. I think this sat for a little bit before I actually pulled it out to use. But once I realized I liked it, I ended up going and getting Sashimi City, which is another basic palette, but not so basic when you actually sit there and create looks. It's just another gorgeous palette. Both of these palettes are so easy to use. Kaleidos has a great eyeshadow formula. It's just not fussy at all. I love this shade right here. This is another one that is a duochrome. You can wear it by itself. You can use it as a topper, and love having both of these palettes in my collection. So these are my underrated palettes. I was going to say the same about the Judy palette, but Judy was underrated for a lot of other people. It wasn't underrated for me. I knew as soon as I saw that palette, I was like, Okay, you guys, so the next question is, what is a palette that is not your favorite, but you can't get rid of? Don't be mad. This is Divine Rose by none other than Pat Mcgrath. And it looks like this. This is just not my favorite mothership by Pat Mcgrath. I will never get rid of my motherships. So I can't get rid of my motherships. I mean, I can, but I can't, and I won't. Now, Pat Mcgrath does not have a bad palette. There's not one bad seat in the house. But given how many other things she's come out with this similar color story, I just never really go for this. I have the Bronze Borealis quad that came out for holiday, and one of my favorite quads is the Voyeuristic Vixen quad that came out with the blush. She also has a few other quads that kind of have some pinky themes. I mean, there's a lot of pink here. So this one kind of just gets lost. And I feel like the looks that you can create with this palette are very similar to those first 2 quads that I mentioned. I'm not saying that this is a bad palette, because it's not, but it's just not a favorite of mine. Could this be an everyday palette? Yes. Are there great shades in this palette? Yes. Do we see these types of shades in her other palettes? Absolutely. I'm just never motivated to pull this one out. I hate putting Pat Mcgrath in that spot, but I mean, that's real. So next is a favorite collab palette. It just said favorite collab, so I'm doing all 3 palettes. And of course, this is gonna go to the legendary Diversa collection. And this was the collab between Odin's Eye and Tina from the Fancy Face. We had Annette from Annette's Makeup Corner and Judy. All 3 palettes have something so different and so special to offer. You can see each content creator in their palette. And I loved watching their reveal videos and just hearing how they came up with the shades. That's Tina's palette. I just thought it was well thought out. I just love just the differences between each of the creators. That was Annette's palette, and then, you know, I showed you Judy's palette. That was my favorite collab of 2021, and I just thought it was really special. That's why I'm really excited to see that Odin's Eye is gonna keep this going with other content creators. I think that's awesome. I really, really like this collab. And this came at the end of the year, but it definitely took the cake for me as my favorite collab. And sticking with this collection, my 2021 favorite palette was the Giant Wolves palette. This palette, I've never seen anything like it. It's just so different. I feel like this is a palette someone could look at and not necessarily know what they want to do automatically, and that's kind of what I love. I just love that there is such a variety of mattes. I love the grunginess of it. I love the coolness of it. I love the story behind it. I love that it's kind of thrown off with this bright blue, but it still reminds me a bit of like Arctic and wintry. And then you have this matte here, which is a bit different from the palette. Like these two kind of don't go with the palette, but in a way they do. It's odd. I've created one of my most favorite looks with this palette. The shimmers are just very pigmented. They're just very beautiful and they're just strong shimmers, you know, because Odin's Eye has a few shimmer formulas. Some of them are like sparkly toppers and some are very, very pigmented. And you kind of see that in this palette. The multi-chrome is the shade Eternal. Gorgeous, so beautiful. I'm hoping you can kind of see that pink flip that's in there, kind of a green. Definitely my favorite of all of 2021, like hands down. Let me move on. So the next palette is a palette that I didn't expect to love. That goes to the Natasha Denona Retro palette. And you know what, after that Zen No palette came out, I didn't really know what Tasha was doing, you know what I mean? But this palette, I didn't really think anything about it. I was like, I'm gonna go ahead and get it. I'm gonna go ahead. But what I love about this palette is that it is almost like the Love palette and the Glam palette together. Because the Glam palette and me did not really, we didn't mesh well. And I remember getting that palette out of FOMO and creating a cool look, but I just never went back to it. So I dismantled that palette and it's a part of other palettes now. It's still there in spirit. But this one, I just love these plummy, mauvey, pinky tones. And I love that there are kind of some browns and taupes. Any color and then brown, I think they look really good together. It's just a very like romantic palette for me. That's what it reminds me of. It reminds me of just romance. I really do like the cream to powder shades in here. Those mattes, they just blend really, really well. And again, like these taupes and the browns, they're just all good. This is another palette where I feel like you can't make a bad combination. Really like this a lot and would love to use it more, but the only complaint that I have about this palette is it doesn't look anything like the mini retro that came out first. The only thing that's retro about it are the shade names, because the mini retro palette had a green in it, and I just think that the midi version would be like a big brother or big sister to the mini palette, but I don't see the relationship between the two. But as a standalone palette, I didn't think anything of this palette whatsoever until I tried it on my eyes and I was like, The next palette is a palette that sparks joy. So the first thing that came to mind for me was the Pat McGrath Decadence palette. I always talk about how much I love that palette, and I pulled it out yesterday, I think. I really did enjoy using it, but it wasn't, when I looked at it, it wasn't like, yes, you know what I mean? So I just started going through my palettes last night, like what's gonna make me feel like that? And I found it. It is the Quintessence palette. And this was one of the 3 palettes that was done by Tentalia and Sydney Grace. Y'all, this baby right here is so galactic. This baby right here is so galactic. It's so beautiful. And this was the palette that didn't excite me at first. I watched Kinky Sweat do a video and I'm just like, okay. Until I sat down to use it. The looks that you can make with this palette. The shimmers that are chosen for this, it's just got that cool vibe, you know? And then you have this kind of maroon shade here that's a standout. And then I can't say enough about this one. And see, the thing with this collection, once we saw all three palettes, a lot of people said, they all look the same to me. They are really not the same. I'm sorry. This shade Aurora, like, look at this beauty. It's like a purple blue, celestial bloom. That's even deeper. The one thing that I think is nice about this palette is that you can kind of make a little cool tone look. And if these colors are too vibrant for you, one thing I like to do is, like, you do a cool tone look up top. Like, you could do a little grayish, kind of smoky eyes, smoke it out with the black, maybe put this on the lid, but then you take like Aurora or, I don't know, Galactic Muse or Borealis, and like just smoke it under the lower lash line. Like, don't bring it down too much, and then put on maybe a liner of the same color. Honey, I can't say enough about Sydney Grace and their eyeshadow formula. I'm kind of sad that I passed on the Be Mine palette, but I almost think I have that palette duped, and some of the shades that I chose were Sydney Grace shadows. So I just couldn't bring myself to buy anymore because I have like 70 Sydney Grace singles. It just was too much, you know what I mean? But these, no, I don't have anything like that. So that palette really brings me a lot of joy, and part of the reason is that it's an unexpected joy that I have for that palette. Next is, what is the newest palette in your collection? So recently I went to Sephora and I went to Ulta. Just knowing me, I wasn't gonna come out without one eyeshadow palette, and I only got one. And this is an oldie but goodie. This is the Supreme Nudes palette by Artist Couture. So excited to have this palette in my collection. I always hear so many good things about this palette. This is a very, very cohesive and solid standalone palette, but I can also see myself using these with my indie multi-chromes and duochromes and all the chromes. You know what I'm saying? Like, it is gorgeous. The formula is beautiful because I have Supreme Bronze, and this is just, it's gorgeous. I mean, 40 bucks for this, I just don't think it's much to ask for. You got a couple shimmer formulas in here. I know the mattes are great. I know the shimmers are great. I mean, this was a palette that I bought without hesitation and knew that it was not going to be a regret in my collection. So that is my newest palette. And the last question, and I'll let y'all go after this. The first palette you used in 2022. It is Eternal Eclipse by Lunar Beauty. I was really excited to try this palette out, and it sat a very long time before I used it. We have these warms and cools, which I love to mix. We've got blues and browns. We have just a straight neutral situation that you can do with this palette, and I love the color combos that you can make. It is an everyday palette. It's got pops of color. The formula is great. I have no complaints about this palette, and the eyeshadows perform very nicely and they're easy to use. I definitely am into it. So that's it, y'all. So I know I can get really carried away when talking about eyeshadow. One of the things that I really enjoy is watching how people use eyeshadow. I love to see how people put colors together. I love to see what types of colors and palettes people gravitate towards. I love to see what people think looks good on them and what they don't think looks good on them. And another thing that I'm really enjoying lately is really getting into YouTube content created by makeup artists. I just really enjoy learning the techniques and just really creating that beautiful blend. So I am so into that. And as I said in the beginning, anytime I have the opportunity to talk about eyeshadow, I'm taking that opportunity because it's very, very exciting. That's it for this video, you guys. Thank you so much for taking out some of your time and hanging out with me on another Mimosas and Makeup. I hope that this wasn't too chatty and wordy, but I love talking about makeup and hanging out with you guys and connecting. It's the best thing about this channel. So I hope this was therapy for you, because it always is for me. And until I see you again, make sure you are being gentle with yourself. Talk to yourself nice, stay safe, and I will see y'all in the next one. Bye.